if you want to be the head of the labor department, someone just says you're the head of the labor department.
Biden's like, you know what?
We
have no room in defense for you, Mayor Pete. How about transportation secretary? You like cars? I saw you come out of a car once. You like Uber?
It's actually insane.
That's how it goes
Think
down.
about the transportation.
You saw Trump's cabinet?
By the way, then after 3 years of doing it, right? 3 or 4 years of doing it, when they finally get the hang of it, someone new comes in.
Yeah. So who has no idea what happened.
It's so
it starts
insane.
all over again.
Yeah.
Cash.
Ladies and gentlemen, group chat.
Cash.
It's $1 trillion. Hot.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Group Chat, the #1 podcast in the world. We have a very hot lineup of guests. First and foremost, we have the first ever relative of ours
Exciting.
on the pod. This is exciting. And she is running for a local city council position. And we're here to get her message out there. And then we have our good friend, Kevin Gould, talking e-commerce, talk the state of the economy. We go deep into a number of topics, and we end with just the free business, casual $1 billion idea that we're just giving away for free on Group Chat.
It's at the end, so you have to,
it's at the
actually
end.
listen to the full episode.
And don't say we don't give you something, because this is basically a lock. Let's get into it. All right, everyone. This is a Group Chat first. We have our first relative on the podcast.
That's true. It is true.
It's a very, very special occasion here. And, you know, we're not going to be talking about family stories. But but we are going to talk about how our aunt is running for city council in the city of Cupertino in California. And welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've been excited about this for a long time.
I know. And so we know our family will actually listen to this episode. They'll have no choice.
We're going to boost some listeners this episode.
Our Indian listenership should skyrocket this week. So Sheila Mohan is a longtime resident of Cupertino. You've worked in the city for like the last 25 years. Is that right?
You know, I worked in the county, and that's the county of Santa Clara, and the city of Cupertino is one of 14 cities in the county. So I worked in the county.
So
and then I went
you know intimately about the city of Cupertino, the county of Santa Clara, and all of its ups and downs.
Yes, I do. My professional career has been in local government. I've lived in Cupertino for 30 plus years. So I feel I'm connected to both local government as well as the community.
So my big question is, we obviously know you very well. You are living a great life. And you have awesome grandkids. Your daughter lives close by. You guys travel. Why are you throwing yourself in the fire of local politics?
You know, I looked at some of the strange things that's happening in the city, and I thought that maybe the city and the community needed me more than these fabulous grandkids.
I actually have a question, because I'm curious what the challenges are in Cupertino, because we've obviously been coming to your house our entire childhood and adulthood, and it always appeared to be a really nice area. So what's changed, I guess, in terms of like what made you want to affect change, and where are the holes right now?
The holes is mainly in the current city council. And I mean, you guys should intimately know how city councils can go up one day and down another day. I mean, Your city is making the headlines all over today.
Unfortunately, a lot of choice words being used by some choice politicians.
I'm sure. We haven't sunk to quite that level as yet. But the last 4 years have been quite traumatic in terms of city policies and city decisions that were made, which impact all the citizens of Cupertino, the residents of Cupertino. So, Anand, when you and Deepu were visiting us when you were growing up, things were much more civil. There was a civil discourse, even if you disagreed with each other at the city level. Things have changed now. Now it's us versus them mentality that's seeped in everywhere, I assume. And so it's like if you don't agree with us, then there's no give. So there's no consensus. There's no attempt to reconcile opposing viewpoints. So with the result, either there's a complete logjam, nothing happening, or the things that are happening are not really conducive to how we want the city to look in the future.
And so when you talk about like the divisiveness, what are the groups that are in Cupertino? Because we just assume more people are on the same page in a city like Cupertino than in like, a much different type of political climate, like, I don't know, where there's actually more diverse in opinions, where, for the most part, we assume everyone's pretty liberal, has same views on things. Is it because one group is going more extreme and kind of affecting the way everyday people view the city?
Extreme in the sense that actions are being taken by government, which are not really conducive to the long-term, vision of the city. And when I say that, let me elaborate a little bit more. There's a group called Better Cupertino, and this sort of came into existence about 4 years ago. And they have the majority of the city council belongs to the Better Cupertino group. So they are not into housing. Anyone who disagrees with them are labeled as pro-developers, and somehow that's a bad word in their lexicon.
Which is interesting because, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Which is interesting because you guys have like a severe housing crisis with affordable housing, and so why would someone not want to develop at this point? Are they just trying to protect the rich? Is that what it is? And like their way of life?
I don't know about the rich, but it is to protect their way of life. You're exactly right. They want Cupertino to go back to how it was 10 years, 15 years ago. But the practical matter is that the population is growing. So there are people moving in. There's Apple Corporation, which built this huge corporate headquarters. So we have lots of new employees, lots of people coming in, but not really, we're not very welcoming to younger families moving in. And the only way we can do that is by building affordable housing. It's not something that can be done in a year or even 2 years or even 4 years, but at least the momentum has to be there. If you're going to sort of stymie it at every level, we don't even get to first base have a vision for affordable housing. And who needs affordable housing? The teachers do, the firefighters do, the barista at Starbucks does. And people like us, we moved to Cupertino for the schools, and enrollment has been declining like crazy. 2 elementary schools had to be shut down in 1 year.
Wow.
And because there's no enrollment, and there's there are no teachers. There are no younger families moving in. So no young kids coming into elementary schools. And lots of the population is aging, and we're not doing anything to welcome the teachers or younger families.
That's pretty kind of scary.
That's very scary. That's like NIMBYism at its like peak. And I know I feel like Northern California, at least the greater San Francisco area, has that problem more than other areas. Because remember, Mark Andreessen famously, like 2 months ago, wanted to block housing in Atherton. And, he's famous for saying everyone build in life, but no, don't build when it affects my real estate.
Yeah.
So That sounds like what's going on in Cupertino in the sense that 2 elementary schools closing is quite crazy.
Especially considering you guys have some of the best public schools in the country.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And so basically the dynamic now is just if you can afford to live in Cupertino, your kids go to private school.
Right. That's about right. Yes. Or you have older kids who maybe go to the high school, because the real problem is in the elementary schools, it looks like.
Interesting. And so we have podcast listeners. We definitely have podcast listeners that live in the city of Cupertino that this impacts directly. And
Right.
we have podcast listeners all over the world, all over the country. And like a lot of people look at California like we're batshit crazy people. And one of the reasons why is when you listen to what Gavin Newsom talks about the surplus, it sounds like we have all the money in the world. So if we have all the money in the world, we have the biggest corporations in the world, why don't you think we as a state can't allocate funds better to help like fix our city's problems? And like if teacher can't afford to live in Cupertino, can the budget allow us to increase salaries in districts where housing is not affordable? Like, why don't we do things that make sense? Like, why is gas like $73 a gallon in California? Like, that's what we don't understand.
And then specifically to Cupertino, I would think Tim Apple's paying enough in city taxes to fund a lot of these projects, if that's where the headquarters are.
So let me just talk about Cupertino, because that's what I'm most intimately knowledgeable about. So it's not really a lack of funds, because there are sources of funding available at the state level, especially because, there's housing that's needed everywhere in California. So there's funding available. But to tap into that funding, you have to have a vision. I mean, you have to say, yes, I want housing. Yes, I want affordable housing. Yes, I want housing for the teachers who teach our kids and who are now driving from Modesto and Fresno and leaving homes at 4 o'clock in the morning to get to our schools by 7:30. So it's not so much funding at this point, but just the will to be able to say, hey, we need you guys to live here. We don't need you guys to be on the road 6 hours a day.
How does the Apple Corporation view development and building out more housing?
I don't know. Corporations sort of, they have their own agenda and their own priorities. And I'm not sure they're intimately involved at this point, as far as I know, in the development of the city in terms of housing.
So I saw you got endorsed by the San Jose Mercury, which is a pretty big deal because it seems like that's the big...
It's a big deal if you read the paper.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone... I mean, growing up, we would see at your house. So
we've read it for years.
Yeah, so it feels like a big deal. So congratulations on that. So in order for you to get elected, what needs to happen here out? We have, a few weeks left. Do you need volunteers? Do you need money? Like, how can people who listen to the podcast that are aligned with your vision be helpful?
Yeah, so there are a few ways that people in Cupertino can help. If you're a registered voter, please vote for me.
That's a given.
And if you live in Cupertino, but you are not a registered voter, but you have a nice house because you're working for Apple, and you have a big front yard, then you can put a lawn sign. You can ask for a lawn sign, and we'll come out and take care of that. But the best way is really to spread the word, to spread our message. I mean, just about everyone, even those who don't live in Cupertino, have relatives and friends in Cupertino. I mean, like you guys.
Yeah.
You have relatives and friends in Cupertino. Just spread the word. And basically, people need to understand that we are, there are 3 seats available. So there are 2 other guys who pretty much share the same position, but they have their own, they're all running independent campaigns. But people need to understand the status quo is just not acceptable. We cannot go back to where we were 15 years ago. We cannot make bad decisions. These guys make terrible decisions in terms of spending all their money on lawsuits. Anyone who doesn't agree with them, they start a litigation process. They've lost them all. We've spent tons of money on lawyers. They're the only guys who got rich. The community did not get rich. The residents did not get rich, but the lawyers did. So those are the kind of things that we are saying, let's get back to sort of common sense policy making. I mean, we don't all need to agree on anything. I mean, look at our family, for example. We don't all agree on anything, but we
we can't even agree on a place to meet everybody.
Exactly. Yeah, but we can make it work. And, we're not launching lawsuits against people who don't agree with us. So, so I'm not sure a city or a community is that different from a family. I mean, we just have to agree to disagree, work together. And people at the highest levels need to, we have a huge obligation because this is not our money. So it's the taxpayer money. And so we have to be even more careful than we would be if it was our own money.
Very well said. So if you are in or around the Cupertino area, where's the best place for people to reach you? Is it on Instagram? Is it on your website? Yeah,
website, Facebook, LinkedIn.
And what's the website URL?
Sheila Mohan for Cupertino.com.
So Sheila Mohan for Cupertino.com. Google Sheila Mohan if you have any.
SHEILAMOHAN for Cupertino.com.
Right.
Yeah. This is exciting. Obviously, we want you to win. We will help any way we can. And, if there's like an inauguration party, that's where we could be very helpful. Tequila will be provided at the inauguration party.
I was talking to my mom this morning, and she was telling me how hard you're working on this campaign. And it's really admirable because you're doing it for the right reasons. So, let's get you elected.
Yeah, it is great fun, but it's also exhausting. I had no idea it would be this exhausting.
That's amazing. Well, we wish you the best. We're very excited. And if you're in the Cupertino, go check out Sheila Mohan, request a sign, learn more about our campaign. Very easy to talk to and learn why she'll make a huge impact in the community.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure we have some folks at Apple that listen. Go donate.
Yeah.
We know your average salary is there.
Yeah, you guys got money. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you, Anand.
All right, well, we had our first relative on the podcast, which is pretty awesome. And now, we like to keep the balance of Indian to white ratio 2-to-1. So are you from Ohio too?
No, North Carolina.
And you're from one of those states, one of those places. So we have our good friend Kevin Gould in, who's been on the podcast a few times before. We were hanging out last couple days, and he's come on the pod last couple times, really just to talk about one, his business, and then two, just kind of the state of what we're seeing when it comes to e-commerce. For those that don't know, you want to give people a background on your businesses?
Yeah, for sure. By the way, it's always great to catch up with you guys too, because I feel like we always have such honest conversations about the space. And
too honest.
Really honest about just what's happening in the space. But it's good because I think a lot of times, you meet with other founders and everyone's on like the hype train of all the
Adam Newman train.
Of all the good things. And so it's always good to talk about, the highs and the lows too. Quick background. I have a company called Combo Ventures. Think of it as essentially a holding company. The last couple of years have started a couple different consumer brands. One is Glamnetic. It's a lash and press-on nail brand. The other is Insert Name Here. It's a women's hair and hair care brand. And then Weight Cart, which is a candle and fragrance brand. We have around 120 people now across everything. Still have not raised any capital. Started D2C. Moved pretty quickly into retail. So Ulta, Sephora, a number of other retailers.
This is why you're so stressed out, because you haven't raised any fucking capital.
Bro, it's hard. It's really hard self-funding, man.
And so, you guys, I remember we had Ann on the podcast, your partner in Glamnetic, and you guys saw like just rapid rise, even with insert name here, just like rapid rise in the business, probably like 2019, 2020. And you guys were fortunate where you kind of started focusing on wholesale and blending out like what your business looked like. When people, we talk about e-commerce a lot, and we're telling people basically what we're seeing, which is it's gotten way tougher to acquire a customer, keep them spending. And it's not because we're being biased because we only have our data points. We have data points from like hundreds of other people.
Yep.
And specifically what I do with my new venture, all I do is talk to brands all day, and all I do is talk to retailers all day. So I have like a unique perspective when it comes to where people's state is at. What are you seeing on e-commerce?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, you have such a unique viewpoint now because you're seeing all the challenges that brands are having on the inventory side. On the acquisition side, it has gotten 10 times harder than it was in 2020. Yeah. 2020 was like the good old days of ads were super cheap.
Post-pandemic?
Yeah, right when the pandemic hit, there was like a 1 or 2 month period in March of 2020 where it was really rough because it was just crazy. And I think like April, May was when it really just took off. All the big advertisers dropped out. CPMs dropped really low. There weren't any iOS issues yet, which was like, I think the major change that happened a year ago. And 2020 was incredible on D2C. And then I'd say the last 12 to 14 months, ever since Apple made that big update, it has gotten brutal for D2C. And I don't see it getting fixed anytime soon.
Because for it to be fixed, Apple would have to change their policy.
Yeah, they'd have to.
How much do you think it's Apple, and how much do you think it's like the consumer fatigue? How much do you think it's competition?
Spaces, yeah.
So I think the majority is still Apple and the iOS update.
Wow, Tim Apple.
I do think consumer spending for sure is like taking a huge hit. But it was a pretty immediate drop off, right? When Apple made that change, and Facebook and the other platforms just haven't been able to figure out a way to get their data back, right? Like Amazon has seen no change. I think Amazon's in a pretty good place. They're getting hit from other, areas with just supply chain and margins and shipping costs going up, but they never lost the data like Facebook or the other platforms did. So I'm predicting a very challenging, next 12 months for D2C.
So would you say, separate from, I know the majority is Apple, but today, October 2022, Jerome Powell calls you, what's the state of the consumer? What are you saying?
I think the consumer spending has definitely softened a lot. I mean, our core customer is 20 to, let's call it 45 female. So I can mostly speak to that customer base. It's definitely softened a lot. I think.
And they were typically the people with the most discretionary income.
I mean, they up until, recently were spending pretty freely. But I think if you're making $60,000, $70,000, $50,000 a year, and now gas costs you an extra $2,000 a year, it's like that's got to get come from somewhere, right? So I definitely think consumer sentiment is for sure down across the board. It's interesting though because retail has continued to perform really well for us. So
that makes me think it is an Apple issue more than ever.
Yeah, right.
Because it's not a product category issue,
or is the retail customer trend older? Is that possible?
I think retail definitely trends a little bit older, maybe a little bit more disposable income. But yeah, when I look at the spectrum of what are the things affecting it, I really do think the iOS piece was like the number one driver for, just increased acquisition costs across the board.
So Apple cratered effectively a whole generation of entrepreneurs in e-commerce.
100%. I think there's brands right now that are dying very slow deaths. So they're just kind of holding on and
hoping things turn around.
Because
you said 12 months. What's changing in 12 months?
I don't think anything changes in 12 months. Yeah, exactly. I think if anything, consumer sentiment is going to continue to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
So you've got rising acquisition costs, consumer sentiment's really tough. Supply chain has eased up from like the cost of freight. Like I know you guys talked about that. That's dropped and gotten a little bit better. Shipping costs are going up, and no one's funding D2C right now unless you've got real growth going. So I think there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurs that unfortunately get in a lot of trouble.
See, this is what's so challenging to me is like, obviously these are private companies. In general, they get to do what they want to do. But they are monopolies for the most part, and they're monopolies that the governments let run. So do you think anyone in Washington actually understands that trickle-down effect? My guess is no.
I think they have zero clue. I think when you watch CNBC and they even when you watch CNBC and the people go on CNBC and they talk about like the iOS updates, no one's in the weeds and understands what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And so I for sure don't think people are really truly understanding what's happening. And I kind of say to like our team, like, we don't even think about competition, right? Like our competition right now is Facebook. Everyone's competition is how do you make Facebook better? Because there's not a shortage of people that want your product or our product or anyone's product. It's how much does it cost to actually get them?
Yeah.
Which is everyone's major issue right now for D2C.
Yeah. And that seems like a problem that will not be solved ever.
And the problem is you have politicians on both sides saying, we want small businesses to thrive. We want the little guy to compete. What the Apple did in their change basically cratered the little guy.
Yeah, but in political landscape, little guy is the guy that owns the corner store slanging pots.
Yeah, but this is more impactful.
They don't know that. They don't know.
So who's going to educate them?
Nobody. Nothing's happening.
Well, it's the same. It's like the Shein problem, right?
Yeah.
Like I think you guys have talked about before too, where it's like everyone is sleeping on what's happening with Shein, and they have a massive unfair competitive advantage, right?
Yeah.
And they are going to slowly attack every single category.
Yeah.
And no one truly understands what that means.
And by the way, Shein's not a good business. I guarantee you that shit is bleeding money. Same thing when ByteDance just reported quarterly earnings.
Yeah, but they're playing from an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
If the Chinese government recognizes you as a company that can make inroads in the West, they're going to continue to backstop.
Yeah, exactly. So ByteDance lost $7 billion.
They probably lost 50. They just reported 7.
And so you when there's no consequences for your actions, sure, you can take over the world. It's the same thing, it's like in so many industries, when you have unlimited funds, you can make a bet that this company is going to figure it out. And even with Shein, they're going to go into every single category. They're going to continue to subsidize shipping. American retailers are going to get decimated the next 12 months because of the recession. And we're going to basically allow all of these.
Yeah, we allowed TikTok to crater American social media companies, and now Shein's going to crater fashion companies.
I'll give you an example. TikTok announced today they are getting in the fulfillment business. They are going to open up fulfillment centers in America. One, terrible fucking idea. Like they don't know anything about fulfillment. If you go buy Shipmonk.
Yep.
If you want to be in the fulfillment business, go buy Shipmonk. But if they're going to go buy,
that means they're going to invest tens of billions of dollars in fulfillment centers.
Yeah, it's what Shopify did and eventually backed off because realizing that this shit's hard and it's actually not a good business unless that is all you focus on all day.
Well, then Shopify went and bought Deliverr a couple months ago, which I think even buying that business, you're in the fulfillment business, which is a completely different business.
Yeah, these guys are software technology people, and they're going into the weeds, which they don't know. These software people do not know fulfillment. It's a completely different muscle that these people are flexing than a software person. And so TikTok is probably like, we can basically lose money for the next 50 years. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
So fuck it. Let's go after American e-commerce in a major way. They did the Talk Shop Live partnership, which I actually like that because I think one, it appeases if I'm a regulator, okay, you're partnering with an American company, you're at least getting that there's some alignment there. But fulfillment seems like an odd choice to figure out because I don't think that's the problem we all have. Fulfillment is not a major concern of ours. All we care about is customer acquisition cost.
100%.
TikTok should just give away free ads to everyone, to every e-commerce company, if you want to completely dominate the market, because that's just air anyways. So you're okay with losing money. Give every e-com, they plug into your Shopify, you get 10% of your revenue free ad spend.
I mean, I completely agree. I think there's most brands are not having a critical issue with fulfillment, and that's easy to solve. I think everyone's got a critical issue with acquisition. And I think what I've been kind of taking it back to just like the D2C kind of early to mid-stage brand route, like what I've been having a lot of conversations with founders, and it's all the same conversation. They're like, fuck, what do I do? My acquisition cost is sky high. And I think what I've just been telling everyone is like, look, you need to take a much longer term view on where your business is going. I think everyone years ago got in the like, I'm going to start a D2C business, work on it 3 years, scale it and sell it. I was like, that's not what's happening right now. So the next 12 months, you need to buckle up. It's going to be really tough, get super tight on cash flow management and power through it. And then make sure you have a lens towards what are real products that you can get retail distribution on. Because I think in order to make it, you have to have a diversified distribution strategy across D2C, Amazon, and retail.
So who are you seeing affected the most? Is the $0 to $5 million entrepreneur? Are they just giving up and going and grabbing a job? Or is it the 25 million plus revenue business that's just like now all of a sudden bleeding cash?
I think it's all of the above.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the 0 to 5 business is not going to get past 5. They're probably going to run out of money, or it's just going to trickle along. And I think the 0 to 5 businesses have other critical issues where they're spending so much on acquisition that then they don't have the money to hire the right people. So it's like a vicious cycle of like, you can't grow if you don't have the right people. They don't have enough traction to raise more money. And so then they just get stuck. And then I think the businesses in like the 10 to $50 million revenue range, depends if they raise capital or not, but they've got the growth stalling issue. And then like, where do they get capital? They have huge overhead from their teams and operating costs. And so they've probably already went through cuts to cut people. And they've got real issues on how do you turn this into a real business long-term?
Yeah. And the only very large e-commerce companies numbers I know are the publicly traded ones, and they're ugly. They're very ugly, right? And so those folks you're seeing now like pivot to more of the omni-channel approach. I'm always so curious, what at this point is the rationale to not sell on Amazon?
I
don't understand why every brand doesn't just do it at this point and sell on Walmart.com, sell wherever the fucking customer is, sell on Etsy, sell on whatever, who cares?
I think it is important, depending on the category, to have somewhat tight retail distribution early on and not go super wide in retail. Like for us at Glamnetic, we're in Ulta and Sephora and a couple other places, but we wouldn't go Walmart, right? That's not the right fit for us right now. But 100% we're on Amazon. It's a great channel for us. We spend so much on marketing that there's a lot of just like
there's people that only shop on Amazon.
Yeah, and there's people that only shop on Amazon. So there's super high search intent. They didn't lose any of the data, so their ads are actually effective. Yeah. And then we've got spillover from the D2C acquisition side of just organic searches for our brand on Amazon. And so I don't know why you wouldn't want to be on Amazon.
Do you feel that from an e-commerce penetration of big brick and mortar, look, the total addressable market of shopping is growing still, but e-commerce penetration compared to brick and mortar, I mean, it's going to stall it's got to stall. I mean, I'm sure the numbers say that it's growing, but I'm going to guess that growth is coming from Walmart.com and Amazon, not everybody else.
I would tend to agree there. But I think if you look at Shopify's numbers too, I don't think Shopify is growing from existing mid-tier stores growing that much year over year. They're growing from, they've been doing a really great job of going and hooking larger stores and bringing them onto Shopify. And so Shopify is growing, but I think their existing stores are, flat to down for the most part year over year.
I mean, all Shopify sellers I know, unless they're the biggest Shopify sellers, are all down.
For sure. By the way, going back to the Amazon piece, the only stores I feel like don't make sense for it are like the Revolves of the world, right? Yeah. Like they have so many, if you're in fashion and you don't have a tight SKU count, like you just can't go on it. It's just
but I'm saying right? Like most traditional D2C brands, Revolve is a multi-brand retailer. Yeah. They're giving the Amazon experience to their customer, right?
Correct.
So that's a very different business. But like most brands, they have hero SKUs, right? Those hero SKUs should just be available everywhere.
I completely agree.
Because you just can't reach the volume of people cost efficiently on your platform.
For sure.
It's super interesting. And I think what you're seeing is we obviously know the direct to consumer space, and we're seeing that kind of evolve in many ways. And you're also seeing it in other industries. Like today just got announced, Uber and Doordash, basically the US Labor Department is asking to reclassify gig workers as employees from 1099s. From
Yeah, this is
independents.
absolute ludicrous. It's just stupidity from the U.S. government to suggest this. Couple reasons. The vast majority of workers have been pulled across all these different platforms. This is the gig economy. So Uber, DoorDash, Instacart, whatever. They don't want to be classified as full-time employees. It's a gig economy. You want to Uber 4 hours.
Gig.
Yeah, you want to Uber for 4 hours, work on your side hustle, and then, maybe you'll pick up some hours at night, but you don't want a set schedule. That is what the magic of all these companies and how many people it empowered to be able to pursue whatever their dreams is. Go ask any Uber driver. They don't want to be a driver. They all have these different aspirations, whether it's in arts or whatever.
I don't know. I asked the driver the other day. All he does is drive.
Maybe he's a workhorse, but he's the vast minority. And what's also stupid about this is is anyone in the National Labor Division, did they see what happened in California?
Yeah.
California voted against this.
Yeah.
California is the most liberal state in the country.
Yeah.
And it's the most labor protective state in the country. And we voted against this rule.
Yeah. So you're saying they're morons?
Yes.
Okay.
I think
Any names?
Just click on the article. You probably, there's a whole list of them.
I think the biggest issue we're having across the board right now, whether it's this or like Shein or all these other business issues, is there's people that are in really important positions across both sides, both parties, that don't fundamentally understand how business works.
Yeah. And it's way more complex than it used to be.
So much more complex, so much more nuanced. The expectation would be, to at least have a high level overview of how business works. I think most politicians have a very low level, idea of how business works. And so you get in these spots where there's just like really bad decisions being made on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, similar. If you're going to be Mayor Pete, for example, we talked about him when he's the transportation secretary. He was the mayor of a small town in Indiana. What qualifications did he have to manage the port congestions that kind of stymie the economy?
It's a cool name, Mayor Pete.
Is that his qualification?
Yes.
And I like him. He's a good orator. But we saw firsthand he did not have the qualifications.
Yeah, why do we have like a longshoreman running that shit?
Well, it's like what you talked about with Starwood, right? And Barry Sternlicht, and why don't they just pick up the phone and call him because he owns the most apartments in the country, and he's probably got all the data, and everyone's just so out of touch with what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, remember at the peak of the port congestion, Ryan Peterson, the Flexport founder, he just got on a boat and was like
helicopters.
And he's live tweeting
I guarantee you, no one from the administration was reaching out.
No, and you could have just gone on his Twitter thread to solve half the issues.
Yeah.
He was live tweeting, here are all the issues. This is what we need to do. Here are 10 suggestions.
So I wonder how much time did the Labor Department spend with Uber and Lyft on this decision? Uber and Lyft have economists internally. They know the economic impact of making this decision. Were they consulted by Uber and Lyft? That's what I want to know.
Well, of course not. Uber and Lyft are very against this.
But maybe did they speak with Uber, DoorDash, Lyft and say, hey, this is what we want to do? And they didn't like what Uber and Lyft had to say? Because my problem is, if they did not even talk to those people and made this decision, it's even more asinine.
Yeah, maybe they talked to a lobbyist. Do you think they called Dara at Uber or the CEO or Tony from DoorDash? Probably not.
Yeah.
It seems like no one wants to put in the work to dig into what's actually happening. And regardless if they understand the industry or not, no one actually digs in and understands the fundamental issue.
Yeah, because that would be real work.
That takes work. That takes hard work. Right?
Yeah, no one wants to do that. Instead, this is like a labor union play to say that we, the United States government, is looking out for you, the common worker. We're going to get you health insurance.
If you just dug one layer in, you would realize the workers don't want it.
Yeah.
The guys that they claim they're protecting have made it clear they like being gig economy workers.
Yeah. Big gig guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And think about it. Wages are higher than ever. We talked about this. Uber said they had no longer a driver shortage.
Yeah.
Because you can make enough money now because prices are so high.
Yeah.
How much would the guy make on your 2-mile ride, the $30 Uber you made Javier pick you up from?
What's his net?
Yeah, what's his net?
I don't know.
He gives 20% to Uber, right?
Yeah.
Call 10% operating costs.
Yeah.
So make $21 driving 2 miles.
Yeah.
15, what is it, 10
Thank
minutes?
God for Javier. I'd be fucked.
Are you going to pay? You should pay him $20 every time he picks you up.
Come on, get out of here. He dropped me off yesterday. That was a free ride.
He's in.
Yeah, look, obviously they're idiots. What do you want me to tell you? I don't have any faith in any
It just
political
sucks because like
establishment.
what we just talked about the D2C, because obviously all three of us have spent so much time with like younger people the last 5 years, definitely under 30. How many people do we know had this like dreams of a Shopify site and they were actually making inroads?
They were making a living.
Yeah, they're making a living. Like all the people at Run Club, the people show up at the group chat events, and obviously all the people you talk to, and that's not even a possibility anymore.
No.
Yeah. Well, look, I do want to give a message of hope because I feel like we were very doomsday. But,
Okay. What's your hope?
I think you have to again take a really long-term view look, and you can't be in it for the quick win. But if you look at, there's amazing brands that are built over 7 or 10 years, right? And you just have to take a much longer-term view on it. And I do think that the brands that survive in the next year are going to come out of it stronger than ever.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, like the Shopify dream is not as easy as it used to be. That's for sure.
What sucks is we've said exactly what you said like 4 times in the last 3 years, because the real scary part of building a business in this economy is the volatility. This volatility of like, things are good. Like there could be nuclear war next week and all our businesses are toast. There could be a Fed interest rate cut next week and all our businesses are on fire.
Yeah.
Like we have no idea. It is so unpredictable. This is why political decisions are not welcomed anymore, because you're not including the idea that there's these mass fluctuations. So like, you have all these people like Kathy Wood, who wrote an article that everyone's making fun of. She is the ARC Innovation Fund Manager, very famous fund manager. She wrote basically a letter to the Fed saying like, you're cratering the economy, particularly her fund. And as much as everyone made fun of it, she has valid points.
Of course.
And she's a very smart woman. And she basically is telling the Federal Reserve, like, I don't think you understand the impact you are making with these decisions. Everyone wants to compare it to Volcker, what he did in 1981. That was a different economy. And it wasn't a global economy like it is today, where we're just going to like, oh, who cares? Let's torch Turkey to the ground while we're at it.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's a really good point. When Volcker just raised interest rates to 20%, which is probably what the Fed secretly wants to do, but it's not politically possible.
Yeah.
It wasn't a global economy.
No.
We didn't rely on all these different countries. What happened in the U.S. didn't affect, what's going to happen to Indonesia.
Yeah.
Which is what's going on now. And then, the government, this is both political parties. It's the only institution where you can be the most senior person in all these different departments with zero experience. Like what gave the Mayor Pete example. You can't be the VP of engineering at Amazon without years of experience.
Oh, yeah, and the most crazy vetting process to get a job.
And I said VP, not CTO. CTO, you probably need 30 years of experience as an engineer at the most senior levels.
And 50 people have to approve your hire.
Yeah, like, so for example, if you want to be the CEO of a late stage company, because I have friends who've gone through these interviews, they have to do 20 to 25 interviews with the board, the CEO, advisors, and like 10 other people in the company. And then you might not even get the job, right? And if you want to be the head of the labor department, someone just says you're the head of the labor department.
Biden's like, you know what? We
really
have no room in defense for you, Mayor Pete. How about transportation secretary? You like cars? I saw you come out of a car once. You like Uber?
It's actually insane. That's
how it goes
Think
down.
about the transportation.
You saw Trump's cabinet?
By the way, then after 3 years of doing it, right? 3 or 4 years of doing it, when they finally get the hang of it, someone new comes in.
Yeah.
So
who has no idea what happened.
It's so
it
insane.
starts all over again.
Yeah.
Every other part, like, think about the U.S. transportation. How many trillions of dollars that? It's bigger than Google. It's bigger than Apple. It's bigger than Facebook. And you need zero experience.
Yeah. Maybe I'll be transportation secretary.
And then even more dysfunction, because I saw a tweet, it's a little off topic. Apparently there's a huge backlog of, in India, people getting work visas, not because they're not in the system. It's because we have no fucking U.S. ambassador sitting there. Garcetti's still sitting here in L.A. and he hasn't been approved. And we're already halfway through the term.
Yeah,
so
it's
we don't
insane.
have a mayor and they don't have an ambassador. What's this guy doing all day?
Oh man,
It's a clown show. Well, here's the good news. If you have a little bit of cash, like a few $100 million, you can basically roll up most of e-commerce right now.
I think we are entering an era of mass consolidation.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a huge opportunity for the people that actually can consolidate in different categories.
So I was looking at this yesterday, the RealReal, which is a very well-known consignment marketplace for luxury goods. They have stores, physical locations. They are a publicly traded company. I think they do somewhere in the area of 1.2 or 1.4 billion dollars of GMV.
What are they losing?
They're losing. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you lose.
Now it does because their stock's down 20% this
The
week.
company is worth $122 million.
So that means they're
Market
losing
cap.
much more than that.
Yeah, and what you're seeing is Poshmark got out like a bandit, sold for 1.2 billion. ThreadUp is worth some $100-something million. Allbirds is worth a few $100 million. A lot of these marketplaces are severely undervalued. Do I think RealReal is a good business? I actually do, at a certain scale. Like substantially smaller. I think it makes sense. There's clearly a demand for them from the consumer side, and there's a demand from this interest from the supply side. It just doesn't make sense at this scale. And maybe if it grows slower, it can get back to this scale. But you just have to cut expenses, right? Like you're losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It's not sustainable. So what does eBay have to buy it? Like, who's going to buy this? It has to be someone like that. Like,
I think it has to be someone that also has built-in distribution to get it out there farther, because the RealReal has the same problem every D2C company has, which is they can't acquire new customers at a cost that makes sense for their business, right?
yeah.
And I think the reality that's going to sink in, and we're going to start seeing headlines in the next 6 to 12 months, is we always say like, oh, someone will come and buy it for cheap. Some of these companies, people just aren't going to buy, and we're not going to hear from them ever again. Not everyone gets a white knight, some private equity firm that, sees some angle, like, specifically Peloton too. I mean, that's a complete dumpster fire at this point. Like, maybe Authentic Brands just licensed the IP.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're buying Peloton clothes at Kohl's.
Right.
And that's a $50 million purchase. If that happens.
Right.
That's what Authentic Brands Group will pay for the
or
Peloton
they license
IP.
Peloton to, I don't know, hotel gyms and get I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, RealReal lost last quarter. What was their net income? $220 million.
That's insane. I mean, I just think there's so many other better places to park your money right now. So like, why?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to take a flyer and invest, and just gamble and invest in RealReal or Peloton or any of these, I guess you can like take that as a flyer, but there's way better value stocks out there right now to probably invest in.
Yeah. And I think I think some of the things we also have to come to terms with is that the TAM is not what you think it is. And I think when these companies all raised money, they thought they could convert 50% of brick and mortar purchases through online marketplaces. But when you're buying a $5,000 handbag, maybe it doesn't work as well online as it does in brick and mortar. And it's as big as it's going to get for now.
I think clearly there's fundamentally something wrong in their business, because every luxury retailer is still in October.
LVMH reported yesterday, the business on fire, double-digit growth in every category.
Yeah, every luxury brand is doing phenomenally well going.
So the category is right.
Yeah.
I think the TAM is there. I think it's just they can't get to new people.
Yeah.
It's just so expensive, man.
Yeah.
I agree. Like in a lot of these categories, the TAM is not as big as they thought, but I still feel like they would have runway. They just can't get to people.
Yeah. You can't efficiently market, because historically the way a RealReal would have worked is over a 25-year period. And then it would have slowly grown into this scale in a healthy, profitable way. Because I still think the business makes sense.
I don't know. I obviously don't shop luxury that much, but I did buy a really nice suit recently. And if I'm going to spend that much money, I want to go in the store and I want someone there telling me how things are fit. What are the different options?
Yeah, but consignment luxury shopping is a huge industry. So it's not that like buying a used handbag is pretty common. It's not like it's completely foreign transaction. Like people,
I mean, with LVMH's numbers, it shows people want the experience. If they're going to go spend $10,000 on a bag, they want to go get the champagne.
RealReal can offer you that in brick and mortar. Their experience is nice. They're doing it. It's just they can't market efficiently,
right?
Because typically it would have been like RealReal opens their marketplace online. And then they have one brick and mortar location. They do $5 million in year 3. They chug it out to $8 million in year 4. And then 10 years later, or 20 years later, they hit the numbers they're hitting now. But we're expecting, as a publicly traded company, venture back, grow. And then you have all these bad habits that you can't go away from.
I think it's that. I think there's 2 core problems. There's that. And then there's also, I still don't think we've seen the full labor reset yet. Like I think companies have made cuts. I think it's going to keep going.
Yeah.
Like it's not, they have, these companies that are losing $200 million a quarter, they have to reset.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of RealReals out there.
Yeah. And I think when you hear companies that are clearly bleeding at this rate, when you hear like a 10% cut, it should be like 30% cut in employees. Like rip the Band-Aid off. It's similar to like, those are the tough decisions as a CEO when like, I don't know why you slowly trickle and just keep hurting morale.
And then they've obviously got the public company issue, and the companies that aren't public have, if they've raised money, have the VC issue of like the VCs still gunning for some growth somewhere so they can like make their fund, right? Just like, it's really tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting ride for a lot of these companies. Because they're going to have to make the current Peloton CEO came out and said, like, we have 6 months to figure this out. So if we don't figure it out, it's lights out. Like, he's being very blunt about his
definitely
situation.
setting the expectations very low. And
yeah. So if he does anything, he looks like a hero. Speaking of the Peloton co-founder, John Foley, apparently he's had a number of margin calls over the last 6 months because he had a $300 million debt facility given to him personally. That's wild.
That's rough.
I mean, I guess from Goldman Sachs' perspective, at the peak, this was a $50 billion company. I remember sitting on this podcast, I was mortified that company was worth $50 billion. Like no one could, and people would argue with me like, no, everyone wants to sit at home, go nowhere, look at an iPad and ride a bike. That's not a $50 billion company. Do you know what $50 billion is? Like, that is transformational company if you're worth $50 billion. Like, you're changing the world if your company's worth $50 billion.
So he sold a bunch before this, but then, I don't know, did you just get cocky? It was like...
So he stepped down from the board and as chairman, and apparently that gave him flexibility to sell stock because he was under financial pressure.
Maybe you should explain what a margin call is too.
Yeah, Anand should explain. He knows it better.
I've not been margin called for the record, but I do understand the dynamics very well.
Okay, let's say you have $1 billion in stock.
So typically for a company like Peloton, publicly traded company, a lot of volume. So let's just use round numbers, like $100 million stake. Okay. And typically a bank will, at the peak, 80% peak of this fuckery, 80% loan to value. So you could borrow $80 million and the bank just gives it to you at like a 1% interest rate. So I think at the time he was doing, I bet you was probably closer to 60, 70% of his stake. And basically if it falls below that value, you have to come up with money. So if 100 million goes down to 59 million, you have to come up with $1 million worth of shares or cash.
At 60%.
Yeah, at 60%.
Yeah.
And you have to do that very quickly.
Like, and that's why you see these accelerated selling days in the stock market when like stocks get ripped, then these companies just automatically sell your shit.
Yeah. So I mean, that dynamic I just described is, I think, the dirty secret of the last 10 months of growth stocks that no one really wants to talk about is how much leverage was in the market from people loaning against hedge funds, individuals, employees, everyone across the board, because banks were so aggressive in lending, and then they just start auto selling, the rest of your shares, and it creates just this massive influx of sellers, and there's no bottom to the prices. That's why growth stocks went down 70-80%, because that was the peak of aggressiveness from the people who held the shares, the employees, the founders, all across the board, because no one thought anything was going down. And you're getting 1% money. A lot of people would use that money and go buy real estate. Guess what? You have to come up with this money at the max. If you have a great relationship with your bank,
48 hours.
If you're John Foley, you probably get 2 weeks because he's such a big client. But employee at, you name your growth stock, it's 48 hours to 72 hours. And if you don't come up with it, they just auto sell it. Fucked.
And the rates have went up. So everyone was it was amazing for a lot of these public founders 10 months ago when the rate was 1%. Now the rate's like 4%. Yeah. And so now they're getting hit from both sides.
Yeah. And the one thing to know, it's shitty, but like, there's different rules for different people. So John Foley doesn't have to come up with stuff 48 hours. But the 100th employee in Peloton, they're just selling his house. They're selling everything.
Yeah, he wakes up in the morning, he got a house, he doesn't have a fucking bike. He's toast.
That's that bike. But no, that's what happened in the growth stocks. Everyone got aggressive. The banks were, it's also like.
Banks were happy to give the money.
Of course. Banks were happy to give the money. They wanted to keep, because there was all these newfound wealth, and everyone wants you as a customer because you're going to go buy a house one day. You're going to go buy some investment product of theirs and they can make money off you. But no one expected these stocks to be down the way they are. And a lot of it's because of leverage. They probably should all be down 40, 50%, not 80, 90%.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating thing, and just seeing, it's really scary. Like when you see like these like billionaires just get fucking liquidated. Yeah. It's really scary.
This is actually a great time too for people just to learn about how money works and the economy works. Like I talked to a lot of our younger employees, and they didn't go through 08. And so it's just like a great learning experience to just.
Yeah, they'll forget it once.
Yeah, everyone forgets about when it's good times again.
Yeah. Everyone forgets everything. No one remembers 08. Everyone was just like ripping. Everyone thought last year that the good times are going to continue forever. The smartest people in the world.
Oh, yeah.
People who lived through 08 and lost their entire net worth.
And people who lived through the dot-com era. John Foley probably lived through the dot-com bust.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you guys. Will you remember and take away this last year when it's over?
Yeah, I think I generally was very conservative, so I didn't lever my positions to the point where, you could actually get in trouble like a lot of these people did. So I was already conservative in that perspective. But I think the one thing, my key takeaway is when you have like a decent position, like take enough to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's just like a lesson. You should, no matter what comfort is for you in life, always
take profits. You got to take profits. I think that's a big thing that like we all learned that like I definitely did not do earlier in my career when I had opportunity to do so. Like, I agree. You got to take money because this shit comes and goes.
Yeah.
Well, I think also to remember when it flips fast, right? Oh, when this thing flipped 10 months, beginning of the year, it flipped quick.
It was, and it's uninterrupted flipping.
Oh, yeah.
It's just flipping.
Yeah. It's just flipped off.
Yeah.
It's completely off now. Interesting. Moving on. We talk a lot about college here. We talk a lot about I'm obsessed with the Ivies. I love a great Ivy League school. I love when I see a Harvard or a Stanford. I don't know. I still hold those schools in high regard. And so the colleges with the wealthiest alumni in the United States, number one. Have you looked at this list?
I haven't.
What's number one?
I would guess Harvard.
Yale.
University of Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Huh.
17 graduates. It's got to be the finance people.
Yeah.
I mean, Elon went there, right?
Elon, Trump.
Yeah.
Wow.
Number 2 is Harvard and Yale, tied with 11 folks. Number 3? Who would you guess? Harvard and Yale are tied for 2.
Stanford?
Trojans.
Wow.
More than Stanford.
I wonder how it's measured.
Just wealth.
No, I mean,
It's on the Forbes 400 list.
Are they
That's
measuring total amount of wealth?
Yeah.
Got it.
Good for USC.
That's insane because Stanford is 5, Princeton is 6, then it's Columbia, Cornell, University of Michigan, Dartmouth, and NYU. It's pretty wild.
Wow.
USC just shits money, huh?
Yeah, I mean, Mark Benioff went there. Brandon Beck went there. That's 2 we know of.
Yeah. And there's probably so many real estate people that we just can't even think of. The Irvine Co. guy probably is a billionaire.
Yeah.
I don't see UNC Wilmington on there.
You gotta be the first.
You got Michael Jordan.
We have Michael Jordan. He's from Wilmington.
He's a billionaire.
Yeah. He's from the area.
Yeah.
He didn't went to UNC, not Wilmington. But counts, I guess.
But yeah, it was super, super interesting just to see that like USC has such a... I think USC clearly, for my experience going there, like it has a nose for money. Like the students go there, even if they didn't come from money.
Yeah.
Like when you left, you were like, these fucking guys guys and girls are gonna make it.
At least in our era, I think it's changed a lot since we went, because we went, 20 years ago? There was this blind confidence USC grads had, even though it wasn't probably warranted.
Yeah.
Everyone thought they could make it.
Yeah. I don't know if these
That's
kids
cool.
have it like we did back then. We're like, I went to USC. We're the best.
I think these kids come from more traditional academics, scored really high on their SATs and GPAs.
That stuff doesn't matter in the real world. It's confidence. Confidence matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, super interesting. Moving on. Really interesting. We talked about this with Ollie from Car Trackers. He was talking about how there was this dynamic where there was going to be a car shortage again because of Hurricane Ian, and it's now reported there's 358,000 cars that were damaged in Hurricane Ian.
Yeah, Ollie predicted this.
That's insane.
It's a lot of cars.
You know what's crazy? I was trying to do a long-term rental over the weekend, and on Wednesday I had reserved one. I did not get a chance to go Thursday, Friday. Saturday, he texted me saying car's gone. There's no cars available.
Wow.
Wait, you don't own a car right now?
No.
No, me either.
I was renting. I was trying to rent a long-term rental, and the car they're like, we have no SUVs right now. We do not have anything. And then I was like, oh, Ollie from Car Tracker said they're all
Ollie said, wait a month if you're trying to dump a car because it's about to get a huge inventory shortage.
That's wild.
It's the only industry where there's inventory shortage now.
Yeah. Ford reported they have a glut, but I just think that I don't know what the replacement cost is, what the budgets are to replace these cars. How much will insurance give for a used Volvo?
Yeah.
They can't go buy new cars. They're going to have to go buy used cars.
Right.
So it's really interesting. All right. Last but not least, Biden came out at a cocktail party last week. Does he drink?
I don't know.
And he kind of casually mentioned that what's going on in Russia and Ukraine is pretty bad, and that we should prepare for Armageddon, meaning nuclear warfare. It's a pretty big statement.
I don't know if you talk about that loosely at a cocktail hour. That's my concern. I'm sure they talk about this privately, but
that's fine.
It shouldn't be talked about publicly, at least to the point where people can report on it. Because that's the last thing we need right now is uncertainty and lack of confidence.
All right, I'm going to give listeners a business idea that I think is a home run. Hopefully one listener takes advantage of it. People actually believe and may have right to believe that there's potential for nuclear warfare. What does that mean? There's no better marketing on earth than fear. What do you need? How about some nuclear raincoats? How about a nuclear mask? How about a nuclear pair of covering shoes? I guarantee you that business, that industry will go from 0 to billions in the next 12 months. Fucking home run.
Yeah, the problem is, if anyone does any research, the nuclear warfare is over there, not here.
Radiation, bro. It can go anywhere.
Actually, as crazy as it sounds, I think you could get that to a $10 million business.
Overnight on Amazon.
100%.
100%.
100%.
We're finding out that maybe masks didn't work and we sold billions of them.
Fear is a powerful seller.
I'm telling you, I guarantee you, if you think you're sitting at home, you're like, Putin, he could fly one of those right over here.
Yeah. I'm sure you could get it. You could scale it.
Yeah, why not?
We shattered everyone's Shopify dreams. Just gave you a new one.
There was a rumor that the U.S. government bought like some medication that helps against radiation. If that's the case, if the government's doing that, we know we could sell some gear.
Yeah. There you go.
Free money. I think nuclear raincoats, free money.
I'm in. Let's do it.
Like do a cool brand, like a more like hype beast nuclear. This is a drop. This is the end of the world.
Drops.
Armageddon drop. All red, flames everywhere. Only available today.
I bet the bunker business is on fire.
Oh yeah, I feel like since COVID, the bunker business.
I would
has been on
guess
fire.
guns probably accelerated in the last 2 months.
Guns slowed down. It did. They did have a. I think they peaked. They've slowed down. But like for nuclear warfare, guns don't really. Like, you can't shoot Russians from here.
Well, you also those coats aren't going to help you either.
That's not what I read. My studies show that the nuclear covers I have are some of the best in the business.
You should start selling them.
Fake news.
All right, Kevin. Well, thank you for joining us. Always fun having you here. Any parting words?
Yeah, I think I just go back to like, be an optimistic realist. I think like buckle down the next 12 months if you're in the consumer space or in the brand space, and it's going to be rough, but there's always
there's a light at the end of that nuclear tunnel.
Exactly. Get the raincoat.
Get to the bunker.
Be protected.
Yeah, get a
Drink
raincoat.
some St. James tea.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll be good.
Yeah. Wait it out.
Exactly. Stolen out of money.
All right, everybody. See you later.